Good morning, everyone. Thomas Fleming here again. Well, I decided to just come and sit down in my swing instead of making you walk with me and bouncing around. I'm trying to work out a different way to hold the phone so I can video these without bouncing as much, but I haven't found what I'm looking for. They're not carrying stock on a lot of things anymore. So you got to order them, and no telling how long that's going to take. And you got to go someplace to pick it up, so still working it out. In any case, I want to talk about the law a little bit. When you're writing something down that's going to be a law, you have to be very careful of the words that you use. If you change one word, you can completely reverse the meaning of a phrase. Satan is really good at that. And in our First Amendment, and we're going to get to that, I'm going to read the First Amendment. It had a very specific purpose, a very specific set of words. And people got in there and pulled in some other words that were out there and completely changed the meaning. The idea of it that the government's not supposed to be involved in making laws for or against religion. And when you go in and you change the words, that means that now no government official anywhere in the world, well, United States, but they interpret it around the world, anywhere in the United States can't do anything religious. And what's the definition of religious? You can't pray. You can't assemble. You can't have a prayer meeting. You can't even use the words in a speech, technically, if you really want to go as far as you possibly can on this separation of church and state. The real purpose of it was to keep the government and the church from collaborating together. Most of them left the Anglican Church, the Church of England. It's a modified Catholic church. It's got a little bit of Protestant reform in it. And the big problem that they had in the United States is in Virginia, the Anglican Church was setting up shop and getting back in bed with government. So they had to come up with this. It's an amendment. It's not a constitution proper. It's an amendment because that was one of those, oops, we didn't think of this. Let's go ahead and write it in. It's as legally binding. But the law, as it's written, was written correctly. The interpretive version of it leaves open anything the government wants to do to shut down churches. The separation of church and state clause, or interpretation, or metaphor, is not a legal document. It's not a legal phrase anywhere in the government. It was in a letter that Jefferson wrote that he and Madison worked on to send to the Baptist Convention, essentially, in Danbury, I think it was, around 1802. You know, that's a few years after our Constitution, if you know your history. But they didn't establish a law. That's the amendment. The amendment is the final version of their discussion, and that is what the law is, not what they thought about throwing things back and forth. Well, what if we have a clown ride out on a unicycle and give the First Amendment? They could have said something as off the wall and stupid as that. And if you want to interpret their private conversation and make it a law, you can make it so that you have to have a clown come out and read the law on a unicycle. It's as stupid as that. That's how stupid it is. But Satan doesn't care how stupid something is. If it can be effective, he's going to use it. And it's been very effective. It's given the government the right to shut down churches in their opinion. This amendment also has the freedom of assembly. We're going to read the whole thing here in a little bit. I'm going to read it. All these things that the government tried to do during the Big C that had to do with churches, and they ignored them, but the government felt they had the right to do what they did until it got to the Supreme Court, where the guy said, no, we have a law for this. And they basically reversed everything the government was trying to do. But they made it tough for people for a while. If you've got to take your petition to the Supreme Court, that can take a long time sometimes. They were quick to respond, which was good for the country, on something as egregious as what the government was doing. But the government is still doing stuff. And the way they look at their law, these satanic politicians, if they can get something established, if they can start doing something that's wrong, that they know is wrong and against the law, they can come in and say, well, the precedent is that we've been doing this for years, it should be adopted. That's their way of sneaking something in that shouldn't be. And they've also got all kinds of little tricks. Everybody goes home, but enough of a forum stays back to pass something on the weekend that nobody covers. These people are evil, and there should be term limits on everybody. They put a term limit on the president saying nobody should be in power that long. Yet they are in there for life, and they spend their entire career campaigning for the next election and not serving us. All these people in Washington, D.C. are our servants. Try to convince them of that. Okay, I'm going to get my paper out. I'm going to read the First Amendment, and then we're going to talk some more about it. And all of our problems are based in Rome. So it's Rome's fault. I'll get to that. Well, I can talk about that right now. Rome was over Israel during the time of Jesus. Which gets back to what I always say, don't worry about who's in charge of the government. You can still do what needs to be done. Jesus worked when they were under the thumb of Rome. But they eventually destroyed Jerusalem, killed over 1 million Jews, scattered the rest. They renamed the land Palestine. That's where it got the original name Palestine. The Roman governor did that because he didn't want the Jews coming back. Smart. Satan's very clever. He gives bad people ideas. But it was God's land that he gave to the Israelites. If they had been doing the right thing, they would not have crucified Jesus, and they would have stayed in their land, and Rome would have been gone. But they weren't doing the right thing. They're doing what so many churches in this world do. They write an interpretive book of how to understand the Bible. We have a number of religions that have these. They call them the Talmud and the Mishnah. And they spend all their time studying the Talmud and the Mishnah instead of studying the Bible. That's why they didn't realize where things were. When Jesus was born, Herod, their, quote, religious intermediary to the government, didn't know where Jesus was to be born. He had to ask their staff, essentially. They didn't know this stuff. We try to memorize it. I'm atrocious at trying to memorize the Bible. I really can't. As much as I try to memorize it, I can't. I've got a half a dozen or so memory verses that I can probably recite, but that's it. There's so many. There's hundreds that I could have if I could remember. I have to look this stuff up. I basically create a worksheet every time he gives me a message. I don't come up with these messages. God gives them to me, and then he tells me what he wants me to put on them. So I take notes. Let's see, I've got notes for today. And it's the Roman Catholic, we're back to Rome again, the Roman Catholic Church, that's the problem. Not the Catholics, the Roman Catholics. There's different rites, as they're called, of Catholic churches. The church in England was the Anglican Church, the one that I mentioned earlier in Virginia that was trying to establish their connection to the government. But the Roman Catholic Church seems to be totally dislocated from God. There's my eagle again. He's flying in. I can't switch the camera around. He's on the other side of the river. He's going too far away. I can't get over there. But it was Rome that destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, set up the one world church of Rome. Didn't work out. There's been many people killed over the divisions of the Christian churches. And the final straw in Rome's end-time coffin, I guess, is the antichrist. It's coming out of Rome somewhere. Now, where? The Roman Empire went from England all the way up into the northern countries around Israel. So they didn't go all the way up to where the Magog or the Scythians were, because they were too much of a warring country. They couldn't have beat them. By that time, it's too far away from the homeland anyway. So, but Rome has always played a big picture in all this stuff. And unless the Pope has a miraculous rebirth, he's currently the leading contender for the false prophet. Whether he is or not, we don't know. We don't know who the Antichrist is either, but he's alive too. They're all, doing all this stuff in the background that we don't see. But again, this is not an attack on Catholics. Now, the Catholics have some issues, and I'm just going to take the stance that Billy Graham did. He said that he was sure most Catholics are going to get to heaven. They just have a little extra baggage to carry along the way. So I'll stay with that. Some of the rituals, some of the things they have to do, they're all things that are nice to do, but you got to get the meaning right. It's like the idea of, well, you can't get to heaven if you're not baptized. Well, it's the right thing to do to be baptized, but if you don't get baptized, you can still go to heaven. The thief on the cross didn't have time to go get baptized, or to do any other ritual for that matter. It's the pure, plain, simple truth of accepting Jesus, and you're getting to heaven. You accept him as your Lord and Savior, believe he died for your sins, and boom, you're in. That's the gospel. Now, you can interpret that any way you want. You can go ahead and twist it and come up with all these 50,000 different denominations. But there's only one Bible. Now, we can argue about that again, saying that, well, there's the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the people that put together these books, they left out some and they included others, and I know you can get into a theological fight over that. So that's why, again, it's important to understand the words. So let me, first off, I got to put my glasses on because I can't read without them. So, the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Prohibiting the free exercise. They can't. Or abridging the freedom of speech. Abridging would be to shorten speech. Freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So we can take our grievances to the Supreme Court, and they did, but the government's not supposed to pass laws or to say anything that would stop assembly, which is what a church is, speech. They're allowing private businesses to operate as a hand of the government under a charter that they shouldn't be operating under. They put filters on what I say. I can't say certain things here on YouTube. The government's allowing them to do that, and that, under the current charter that they're under, is against the law. But the fox is in the chicken coop, and the hunter, he's tied up and gagged someplace. Now, I'm not calling for violence. I'm just using a metaphor there in the reference of the fox in the chicken coop. They're getting away with so much stuff right now, and it's this nudge technology or terminology that they use. You can't come out and push it on them, the frog in the boiling water, but you can do a little bit at a time, and they won't notice, especially if you create distractions. They're following the, communist playbook, but it's not communism we're headed for. I mentioned that in my last video, I think. It's feudalism, which is even worse than communism. But our First Amendment is there for a purpose, and the separation of church and state has nothing to do with legal documentation anywhere. It's one person's interpretation. And they came up with that, phrase in their discussions, Jefferson and Madison. And they wrote it in a letter. But then they wrote the First Amendment, and that's the words that they wanted to use. You can't merge the two. You can't say this is what it means because they said this phrase too. No. Our government is just, it's corrupted so far that there's no hope. There's hope we can survive in God's protection, but there's no hope for the world. The United States has been the defender of freedom and everything else in the world, oppression, things like that. But money's the root of all evil. It's these rich guys that are changing the world so that they can stay rich. They don't want to kill everybody off because then they won't have anybody to serve them, to wait on them. But they're going to kill off most people. They're not going to kill off as many as they want because we have the book of Revelation to tell us what they're going to do. Just keep your eye on Jesus. Stay close to him. As I mentioned, keep your armor on. Don't go any place without it. The world is not a safe place anymore. The idea that you could, just a few years ago, walk out your front door and leave the front door open. To leave things in your car while you're in shopping. No, the world in general is an evil place now. It's not safe for good people. It's not safe for bad people, but who cares, right? Yeah. God does. God doesn't want anybody to go to hell. And he's put enough signs in our way. People just refuse to accept them. They go, well, I can't accept the Bible because it's been interpreted wrong so many times. Okay, give me a specific. Tell me exactly where it was interpreted wrong. There are studies that you can study where this verse was left out, or this verse was modified, or they changed these words, or they're using something that somebody told them. But we know where all those are at. We know that the King James Bible originally was created to give more power to the king so that he could have an affair and get away with it again. The church said, we've already absolved you once, we don't want to do it again. So he had the Bible changed so he could do what he wanted to do. Now we know where all this stuff is at, and they've dealt with it. So don't, King James Bible is good for use, so don't worry about it. But that's the truth. The truth of the matter was, it was ordered by the king, who was the head of the church technically, especially after his rewriting. Mankind will mess up anything if you give them enough time. Okay, how are we doing on time? Yeah, we're doing okay. I'm going to get up now, I think, and walk a little ways away. One of the problems that I don't like with the selfie stick that I've got is it doesn't allow me to. I should be able to put the bar. The bar is almost vertical right now. It's almost vertical, not quite. But I should be able to hold it straight out in front of me. You see people do this all the time, where they hold the stick is way out in front of them, and the phone's on it, and they can walk that way. I can't. I've got it shortened up quite a bit. This was designed for a smaller phone. I've talked about this before. And this phone is heavy. They keep putting more and more technology into these phones. The computer in this phone is greater than the computing power on the lunar missions, or frankly on the space stations. The only reason the space stations have modern computers on them is their laptops, and they take them up with them. But the technology in the space station is ancient from a technology point of view, because it takes forever to get something to be approved by the government. Mil-spec, as they call it, military specifications. It takes about 20 years to get something pushed through that. Now they can, on special circumstances, shorten that. But the government, this is the government, you see what they do. When I worked on Milstar, communication satellite, they wanted us to test components so much that in the engineer's analysis, the conclusion was we would test them right up to the edge of failure, and then we'd launch it. You're going, no, we can't test them that much, not each piece. We can select groups of components and pull them out and test them to failure and see what that is. But we can't test every part to that level, because then it would go up there and fail within a couple of months. So they got them to back down on the testing as long as they needed to. So sometimes you can do something with good intentions and have it be completely crazy. I was looking to see if I could find any critters over here. I had a couple of armadillos around my tent last night. I don't see them here where I'm at. I don't know why they're not out. We've got a little bit of, well, you can see we have some overcast. More trees, right, huh? The only green you see are pine, because all the hardwoods are asleep for the winter. Although we're hearing a lot of birds, which means that we're getting close. I don't see any. That field normally has some in it, and I don't see any, so I'll try to get some footage. I'll walk around here in a little bit. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless. Okay, I'm getting ready to make some hamburgers. Yeah, I do have a fire pit there, but I typically don't use wood, and I didn't bring any charcoal. So we're going to cook it on this little propane tank. I have a bunch of these little leftover tanks from my scouting days. And we're going to heat it up on this nice little iron skillet with some grill marks. It's going to be good. Okay, here we go. Let's make some hamburgers. I know I'm doing it the lazy way, but pre-made. Somewhere I have a metal spatula, but I don't know where it's at. And I don't feel like looking for it because I'm hungry, so I'm just going to go ahead and do what I can here. Just making two for me right now. The wind's kind of blowing off and on. Hopefully I'll be able to get all this done without any problem. I walked away for a bit and I didn't want the crows coming down here and eating, so I put some of this stuff up. All right, so there we are. It's heating up. I could have heated the pan first, but I didn't. It would be done in a bit. I'm going to go ahead and put the meat and stuff up and let it cook for a bit, so I'll be back. Okay, I'm starting to get all my sauces together, and we're going to go ahead and put some lettuce on. From now on, I cannot leave the table because I hear the birds. Once I get those flattened out, I'll get some coleslaw. And we're starting to cook. We're not quite there yet. Obviously, I got to turn them over some more, but we're getting there. Okay, there we are. I do like my beef cooked medium rare to rare, so that's okay. That is cooked solid, and I'm just going to eat out of the tub. There's no point in me keeping that. I rinsed everything off, but I'll do the dishes after I eat. Okay, I am in my tent. Yeah, I could be outside, but I just came in to sit down where I've got a more comfortable chair and eat. Blessings.